The Pittsburgh Steelers won their first preseason game of the year, 16-3 over the Dallas Cowboys in the Hall of Fame game. But we all know that doesn't matter. Who cares about preseason scores? What we care about is who showed up and who showed out. I'll break that down with my analysis, Chris Carter, right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Remember, you can listen to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Odyssey, or you can watch this podcast like you might be right now on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for our daily content Monday through Friday, and we're working on getting you some extra Saturday and Sunday tidbits as well there. So check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to the Locked On Steelers podcast there. Also, if you rate us 5 stars with a positive comment on Apple Podcasts, you get a shout out at the end of the show. Thanks to all those who have done that. We do have a shout out at the end of this show. So let's get right into this, right? Because 16-3, okay, they won. Great. Hoorah. Steelers fans can have something to chew on heading into what's going to be a crazy Hall of Fame weekend with Bill Cowher, Troy Polamalu, Alan Faneca, Donnie Shell, and Bill Nunn, who's technically actually already enshrined because that happened back in February, but still, that's a whole bunch of Steelers to celebrate, and that's going to be a great time. But we're here to talk about what happened on the field. And first and foremost, Najee Harris, as advertised. Yes, he only finished with 22 yards on 7 carries. He started the game 4 carries for 18 yards. That's 4.5 yards per carry. Looking very strong, running through things. You saw eventually when they started rotating in more backups on the offense, he wasn't able to gain as much, but this was a guy who was running hard, who was extending plays. When the line wasn't blocking, he was figuring out where to go, extending him, getting some first downs. Really solid showing from him. He looked good. And he looked exactly the part that we've been telling you guys right here on this Locked On Steelers podcast, how he's looked all through training camp. So there's that into the equation, right? But we kind of expected Najee to shine, right? Because this was also a lot of the Cowboys backups that were out there. So who were some of the guys who shined outside of Najee? Well, oddly enough, one of the first names is going to be not a name that you normally would think, and it's the punter, Presley Harvin. Now, I've been hyping up Presley Harvin. I told y'all how bad of a man he was at Georgia Tech and how he was booming balls and that he became the first black punter to ever win the Ray Guy Award for best punter in all of college football. But man, he was looking good. He had some really good pinning punts. He had one that pinned right down at the 1, a couple that pinned down in the 10. He was getting after it, showing and booming punts, like getting distance on them. It wasn't just like, oh, they were at the Cowboys 40 and he punted it 39 yards. No, he was getting after it. He was putting some hang time on it. This was as advertised. And it seems like maybe Presley Harvin is the kind of guy that he needs pressure to be on for him to deliver. Because at training camp, it was kind of neck and neck at times with him and Jordan Berry. Well, if that showing is any indication of what he's going to be doing moving forward, that means that I think that Jordan Berry is going to have to seriously up his game in a future preseason game for them to justify cutting Presley Harvin and keeping Jordan Berry. But enough about the punters. They're the punters. Who cares? We're excited about that, but at the end of the day, that's not going to win you all the football games. Now, other guys who shined, obviously, Alex Highsmith. I mean, did you see his sack with the spin move? Now, I told y'all, if you were listening to this podcast, you knew I was breaking it down. His spin move had improved. He's increased his strength. He's increased his mobility on the edge. He's been able to find different ways to engage offensive tackles and to use leverage. And man, in just one play, you saw that happen against the Cowboys when he had a crucial sack on them. Big night for Alex Highsmith. Again, not going up against the best offensive tackle in the land or anything, but again, he's not going to be getting the focus of any offensive line. That's going right to TJ Watt or Cam Hayward or Stephon Tuitt. But you can't double team everybody. He's going to get those one-on-ones. If he capitalizes like he did on Thursday night throughout the season, might be some real movement there. Now, I'm not here to say, like some people were on Twitter, oh, he's already better than Bud Dupree. I'm like, whoa, slow down. But Bud earned his rights and Bud earned his respect in the NFL. Not that Alex Highsmith won't, but really early, still preseason. But the things we're seeing out of Alex Highsmith, very good in the preseason. Now, other things that I noted here, another running back actually shined pretty well in this game, and that was Kalen Ballage. Now, Kalen Ballage, they signed him up, fourth-year guy, in free agency. And if you were listening to the podcast way back in March when they signed him, I was like, that's a warning shot. Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, Jalen Samuels, you better be on aware because we knew the Steelers were going to draft a running back, and they already signed a running back. That was a sign that, hey, guys, you better up your game because someone might take your job. And sure enough, Kalen Ballage came out. He had 5 carries for 19 yards and a touchdown. It was a really solid, strong touchdown in the red zone. Really good stuff, pushing forward. He also finished, I'm looking for his receiving stats now because I think he caught a pass. No, it doesn't look like he did. But still, he ran the ball really hard. And he was able to get the touchdown. He looked smooth in doing so. This is what we've seen all throughout camp. He runs hard, and when you get to see him catch the ball a little bit, you will see how he does in the receiving game a little bit more. But he's flashed that a lot in camp, especially in 7 shots. I think that there's a lot more meat on the bone when it comes to how this team performs in the red zone. I want to talk about that a little bit. But first, I want to talk to you guys about our friends at Built Bar. Remember, Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It's a healthy treat that is also the official protein candy bar of the official protein bar of the U.S. track and field team. And it comes in so many different flavors, whether you want a fruity snack like raspberry, strawberry, or orange, or something different like salted caramel, cookies and cream, or the new flavor, Rocky Road, or my personal favorite flavor, double chocolate. Built Bar has so many flavors for you to enjoy. And the best part, they're all healthy. They range from 130 to 180 calories. They pack 17 to 18 grams of protein and only have 4 to 5 grams of sugar and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. That's a tasty and healthy snack that'll save you from eating that snack you'll regret later and stay on task with anyone's diet. Order today and you get your favorite flavor delivered right to your door. Go to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15, all capital letters, all one word, LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order at built.com today. Again, that's LOCKED15 at builtbar.com. We're going to keep it rolling here, right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, continuing to talk about this Hall of Fame game performance from the Steelers. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It wasn't all sunshines and rainbows for the Steelers. They certainly had their ups and their downs. Let's look at the quarterback play because that was going to always be a serious component of conversation here. Mason Rudolph, 6 of 9, 84 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. I will say this. Mason didn't look amazing, but he did his job adequately. And I wasn't mad at the way he performed. Now, he did have a bungled, looked like handoff snafu on a jet sweep to Chase Claypool that wasn't actually a jet sweep. Might have been a play action where the timing was off a little bit. And that was like on the first possession of the game. So everyone was like, oh boy, here we go, Mason. You're not looking too good. But he completed his first 5 passes in a row, and the first incomplete pass he threw bounced right off the hands of Chase Claypool. I felt like what that was the Steelers looking at their situation and saying, look, Mason, we're not going to ask you to become Patrick Mahomes overnight. Your job in this offense is realistically going to be managing the game, taking the underneath stuff, and letting the run game do the real work. I think that's what happened here. Again, he finished 6 of 9, but one of those passes was a 45-yard bomb to Chase Claypool. And it was on the money. He caught it. Now, he got up a little slow. He was on the ground for a little bit. They went to commercial break. He got up. You saw him without pads at one point in the game. It was confirmed by Mike Tomlin. He is okay. To me, it looked like he just got the wind knocked out of him. And you saw the way that he fell on the football when he caught it, and he got up and started to run again. And then when he tackled again, he kind of was like, oh boy. If you've ever had the wind knocked out of you, and I'm sure a lot of you have, you know what that's like. It's like, it feels like you can't breathe and you need a couple minutes, not just 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes, 2.5 to catch your breath. And that looks like that's what happened there. But by all indications, Chase Claypool was fine. He went up for that ball fine. Looked like a good play. But again, Mason Rudolph, not spectacular, but decent enough. I'd give him close to a C+ if you put him around there. Solid performance. Not mad at that at all. Wasn't asking too much of him in this game. Now, Dwayne Haskins came in. He finished 8 of 13 for 54 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He had some plays were a little more not as composed as Mason was looking, because I will say this, Mason during training camp had looked ill-composed and not all the way together, kind of staring down his guy, not believing in his reads. That went away in this game. It looked like he was trusting what was in front of him. Also, no Steelers quarterback got sacked in this game, according to the stat sheet. I don't remember one being sacked when I watched the game either, so I'm pretty confident saying that. And Mason Rudolph, when you look at the way that the way he played, it was kind of contained and keeping it within himself. Dwayne Haskins, a couple times, he had a nice little scramble where he slid down a little bit in front of the first down marker. He had some plays where it looked kind of impressive physically, but still didn't put it all together. But again, this was his first preseason game after switching to a new team after all that he's gone through. I think that's pretty understandable. Now, the guy that I'm sure a lot of Steelers fans want to talk about is the rocket scientist himself, Josh Dobbs, who finished 4 of 6 for 37 yards and threw a touchdown pass. That was pretty cool. He threw it to Tyler Simmons. I believe that was in the fourth quarter on a quick out route. It was cool to see Josh Dobbs get his. And again, here's the thing. Josh Dobbs, probably not going to make this team. If he does, it's because one of the other guys that are backups were shipped somewhere else, and he's the third option there. But everybody loves this dude. And I mean that because, the past year, he was the clipboard guy for Ben Roethlisberger. He's always helping him out. He makes sure that he's available for anyone that he can help out, with how they're developing. He's a smart guy. He's a likable guy. He's a friendly guy. This team roots for him. Like when he threw that touchdown, if you have the ability, if you have the DVR, if you have NFL Game Pass, anything like that, go back and watch after he threw that touchdown and watch how many people were high-fiving Josh Dobbs as he walked down the sideline. That's because everyone was rooting for this man, and they're so happy to see this guy succeed. Stephon Tuitt was like, yeah, let's go, buddy. That's the kind of family environment that you get from the Steelers sometimes. And I thought Josh Dobbs did himself well. Nothing that's going to save his job. And, again, maybe he'll be the career backup that's holding the clipboard and is the guy that's left on the inactive roster more weeks than not. But still, I thought he showed himself. He showed the world like, hey, I'm still here and I'm still working on my craft of being an NFL quarterback. So not mad at that at all. But ultimately, anyone that's trying to glean too much from these quarterback performances, like saying, oh, Dwayne is the number 2 quarterback, or Mason's the number 2 quarterback, or Josh Dobbs should be the number 2 quarterback, I'd say slow your roll. It is way too soon to determine anything of that fact. Right now, it's like what I've been telling you all off season, all training camp. Put it in your notes. Tally up those notes at the end of training camp. We know that Mason struggled in 7 shots a little bit. We know that Dwayne Haskins has had some success in 7 shots. We also know that he's had some struggles as well. We know Josh Dobbs has had some impressive moments where no one was expecting something of him, and he showed up. Let's keep adding to these notes. We got 3 more preseason games, good Lord, that we have the time to figure this out. We will figure this out. We will see how this goes. But the quarterback position is still way up in the air. But I will say Mason Rudolph, I think he put his foot down in people thinking that he was just going to cave overnight and just give up this spot without any fight to Dwayne Haskins. Good showing for him. Dwayne Haskins, again, not mad at his showing at all. Thought he did pretty fine there. And Josh Dobbs doing a good job there. So with all the quarterbacks being evaluated, I want to get to a lot of the young guys that aren't the big name guys like Alex Highsmith, like Najee Harris, guys that you might not be too sure about as far as how you felt about them. I'll talk about those guys right after this. Wrapping up things here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Let's keep it moving here. Now, there were a bunch of different guys who I thought acquitted themselves very well. Off the top of my head, Miles Killebrew. I've been telling y'all, safety guy that's going to be a backup. He's going to be on the roster. Count on that. He's tackling well in space. He's being in the right positions. You like what you see there. But the safety that just stood out to me the most was Trey Norwood. And I think anyone that watched that game was like, especially early on, was like, oh, this guy. Okay. Now, looking at some quick stats here, excuse me while I ponder to my right to make sure that I see things correctly here. Now, Miles Killebrew led the team with 6 tackles. James Pierre was in there with 4. Justin Lane had a forced fumble. He also had 4 tackles, which was second most of the team. Still didn't see him put it all together, but, hey, again, early in the preseason, he has time to go out there and continue to make his name. But I saw something. Trey Norwood only had 1 tackle, but you saw 2 things from him that you were really impressed by. One, he had a really cool breakup on third down in the red zone. Also, Steelers 7 shots, the drill that I've been telling you about all training camp, where the offense lines up on the 2-yard line and the defense tries to stop him 7 times in a row. It showed up because the Steelers were converting on their red zone drives, and the Dallas Cowboys never did. So I thought that was good. In one of those drives, Trey Norwood was following the eyes of the Cowboys quarterback, and in a situation where his man was open at like the 2-yard line or maybe even the 1-yard line, Trey Norwood read the play, broke on the ball, broke it up, almost got the interception. It hit his arms. Solid play from the guy. He's looked this kind of rangy, comfortable dude that's comfortable enough to roam, but not too confident that he's sacrificing all this real estate to do so when he's roaming. Because that's something that, as a 7th-round draft pick rookie, it's like, look, buddy, don't be taking all these risks. But when you're confident enough to make plays like that, that's solid. Then he also blocked a field goal in this game. Really impressive stuff there from Trey Norwood. You do things like that, you'll make sure that you have a spot on this depth chart, and maybe more than one way. James Pierre looked solid. He gave up a couple passes that were like, okay, not too mad about, but they were solid contested passes. He was keeping the play in front of him. And again, ultimately, the Cowboys never scored a touchdown. Now, granted, no Dak Prescott, no Ezekiel Elliott, no, the offensive line wasn't the full offensive line, whatever. We get that. But these were the Steelers' backups versus another team's backups, and they were able to not just hang on, they kept them out of the end zone for the entire game. I think that says something. Now, other guys that I thought shined pretty well, I thought Steiner, the defensive back who had the interception, I thought his break on the ball was beautiful. He's had some rough days in camp. I don't know if that interception will save him. Again, this is why I caution everyone to take everything with a grain of salt. It's like, okay, let's take it one step at a time here, buddy. Let's figure out who actually wants you and all these type of things. But, Steiner, a guy that had 2 tackles, and a pick on the day. He made a good break on the ball. I believe it was Ben DiNucci who threw the ball. And he broke on it, made the pick, looked smooth doing it. Solid play. Let's see if he can keep that up through training camp. Other guys, I thought Robert Spillane struggled a little bit in the in pass coverage. He was getting beat underneath, and it was kind of like, okay, they put him at the Devin Bush spot because they weren't going to play Devin Bush. They weren't going to play him like they didn't play Joe Hayden, like they didn't play TJ Watt, Stephon Tuitt, Cam Hayward, Ben Roethlisberger, a number of guys on this roster that didn't play in this game. So Robert Spillane had to kind of fill in there, and that's just not his role. His role is underneath, work underneath, stick underneath, be physical underneath. That's what you're going to do. So I'm intrigued to see what Robert Spillane is like in the actual role that's been basically built into this defense so that he could fit it, and Devin Bush can be the rangy guy that gets all those jobs done. Cassius Mark had a sack in this game, which blew my mind. Now, again, against backups, but who cares? I didn't think that he was going to be capable of doing that much. He didn't look bad. I wasn't mad at him in this game. We'll see if he's upped his game at all. Ulysses Gilbert, another linebacker that struggled in coverage. It looked like he was really struggling. He had a missed tackle on a third down where he kept the play in front of him, wrapped the guy up, and then just let him kind of slip through. Things happen. It's not dooming, but it is something that's like, okay, next game, man, you better come out and you better be ready because this team could go and get themselves another inside linebacker. They got the cap space to do that. And KJ Wright, who just visited the Raiders, is left Las Vegas without a deal, so that means he's still on the table. I would not put it past Kevin Colbert and these Steelers to try and get reinforcements somewhere before the season starts. And if you won't want that to be your group, you got to start showing up. I thought Antoine Brooks looked solid in the slot. He had a nice tackle at one point. Quincy Roche had a sack and a really good sack. The rookie out of Miami, Florida, thought he was solid. Not immaculate, but solid. Other guys, I thought Isaiah allowed him up good for a good hot minute. I'll also say this: the offensive line, it was tough to really get too much from this group, but they definitely showed the physical side of things. There was one play where Kendrick Green just pancaked this man like 5 or 6 yards downfield. You got to love that kind of aggression. There was also a couple plays where you saw Dan Moore Jr. pull out in space and work and block ahead of Deontay Johnson on a wide receiver screen, showing the athleticism that you're like, okay, Dan Moore Jr., all right, we need to see a little bit more of this. Now, granted, he's not guaranteed a starter spot. In fact, he probably wouldn't have played as much in this game if it wasn't for Chukwuma Okorafor, excuse me. But we will see how that plays out. I'm still very intrigued to see how this offensive line shapes out. I'm also very intrigued to see when training camp resumes Saturday, who's going to be available. Now that this full week of practice is done and the first game is done, maybe some of these guys start coming back. If you remember my bold prediction from, I believe it was the Wednesday episode of the podcast, I predicted the Steelers are going to use this weekend while the Hall of Fame's going on and everyone's down there in Canton, Ohio, talking about all this different stuff. The Steelers are going to be working on TJ Watt's contract. And my bold prediction is that it was going to get done sometime this weekend or this next week. Maybe way wrong, but it just feels like the right moment for when the Steelers are going to do something there. So there's a lot of different things that are about to happen with the Pittsburgh Steelers, least of which is, talking about a preseason score and them winning a game by 13. But it's clear to me, and it should be clear to you as Steelers fans, this team has a lot of young pieces that they're trying to figure out that have talent, that can pose problems for other teams' offenses and defenses. And it does at least give us a little bit of fun for the next preseason game to see how they might do and how they might fill out the rest of the Steelers roster. We'll be talking about that when I come back Monday after 2 more days of training camp practice. That resumes Saturday and Sunday. Stay tuned here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Remember, we're on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Odyssey, as well as YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. I can't express enough how it is important for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share it with your friends and family. Get them up on it. Any Steelers fan, they love this free daily content just coming your way all the time. Thanks again for listening to Locked On Steelers podcast. Remember, if you rate us 5 stars with a positive comment, you get a shout out at the end of the show, just like this person whose username is Pavlov1901. Left a 5-star review saying, love it, and I love this podcast. Lots of different insight from different guests and always entertaining. Also, unlike other daily Pittsburgh podcasts, this one I can count on to actually be daily. That's what we strive to do here, Pavlov1901. We want to be daily. We want to make sure that people are getting their dosage here of the Pittsburgh Steelers, like this, wrapping up a preseason game, comfortably, kind of casually giving you the sense like, hey, you're actually talking to me. I'm not trying to be some guy in the booth at CBS Sports or Fox Sports, giving you too hard of a breakdown. We're having a little bit of fun while we do that. Be back in your ears on Monday with more at Locked On Steelers. Remember to subscribe to us, follow us. You can follow me, Chris Carter, on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. For all the Steeler fans out there, we hope you have a happy weekend. Enjoy the Hall of Fame weekend. Lots of Steelers to celebrate. I'll be back in your ears very soon.